Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're having a fantastic day so far. So in today's video, we're going to be discussing a little bit different things as we're going to be talking about how you can actually make your Social Security payments go further in a little bit of an interesting way. So we're going to be covering that. Plus, Monica Lewinsky, well, that's certainly a familiar name. Her name is coming up once again as she penned an op-ed article talking about 5 different changes that she would like to make to the Constitution, or different amendments rather. So we're going to be diving into that as well, which I would definitely love to hear your opinion on. But before we go ahead and dive into the main content of today's video, if you wouldn't mind helping me out real quickly by just giving this video a like, that just helps out with the good old YouTube algorithm, and also consider subscribing to my channel if you have not already. Okay, so diving right into the main content of today's video, of course, Monica Lewinsky, her name is coming up once again today in the Hill. She's actually suggesting 5 different changes or 5 different amendments she would like to make to the Constitution to perhaps improve our country. So we're going to be covering those 5 changes, and I would definitely love to hear your thoughts on all 5 of these changes. So according to The Hill, Monica Lewinsky penned an op-ed Monday calling for a series of constitutional amendments, including age limits for elected officials and a ban on presidential self-pardons. In a piece in Vanity Fair, Lewinsky offered her vision for a more robust democracy via 6 new amendments: no presidential self-pardons, mandatory background checks for presidents, no suspensions of the U.S. Constitution, a retirement age for elected officials, elimination of the Electoral College, and codification of a women's right to an abortion. So let's go ahead and talk about these 6 different changes, and I would love to hear your thoughts in comments below. So of course, the first one there is obviously about Donald Trump, being that right now there's 4 different cases against him, and if he becomes the president of the United States, he's going to be able to pardon himself in every one of them except the one in Georgia, because that's a state case, which he would not be able to pardon himself, being that it's not at the federal level. So what do we think about that? Certainly that would be fine with me. I don't think someone should be able to excuse themselves from a crime, but at the same time, all sides of the political aisle should be treated equally. Everyone should be treated equally. So if you take documents outside of the White House, whether you're Joe Biden or whether you're Donald Trump, you should both be charged. So, I'm fine with that as long as everyone is treated equally under the law and we don't have one set of rules for one people and another set of rules for another people. I think everyone could definitely get on board with that. As far as mandatory background checks for presidents, once again, I'm completely fine with that. Although I would say that right now, if you're running for office, there's probably going to be dirt dug up on you either way before you go into office. They're very good at pulling up old posts you might have made online. So at this point, it's probably not necessary, but I'm certainly on board with mandatory background checks. No suspensions of the U.S. Constitution. Again, I'm completely on board with that. I would think anyone would be on board with that. A retirement age for elected officials. This is probably something I would definitely be on board with. You could say that it's perhaps could be like discrimination of age by not allowing someone to continue being in office or in Congress past a certain age limit. But then again, we also have age limits on like you had to be 35 to be president, for example. You could say that's discriminating against people in their 20s or early 30s. But again, it's probably something that's necessary. What would you put for the age as far as like the maximum age? What would you put for that? And then of course we have the elimination of the Electoral College. What do we think about that? Let me know in the comment section below. And then finally, codification of a women's right to an abortion. What do we think about that? Of course, broadly speaking, if we look at polling, most Americans are okay with abortion up to 12 weeks. Past 12 weeks, most Americans are against it on both sides of the aisle. But let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. Now, moving into the main topic of today's video as far as Social Security payments go. So as we all know, next year in 2024, the cost of living adjustment is going to be 3.2%. But broadly speaking, if we look across the board, not just the numbers that our government is giving us, I would say, and most people would probably agree with this, I don't know, let me know in the comment section below, but I would say the prices across the board have gone up a lot more than 3.2%. I mean, just looking at my grocery bills, if I look at the same things I was buying last year versus this year, they've definitely gone up by more than 3.2%. So whether or not you want to say that your government is lying to you, that's completely up to you. But obviously, the inflation is much more than 3.2%. And what can we do about that? Well, we can go out and continue working in our retirement years, try to make extra money. But a lot of people, they don't want to do that. And obviously, certain places that you live in the United States can be more expensive than others. For example, if you're living in California, more than likely you're paying a lot more than someone like in Idaho would, for example. Gasoline is a lot more expensive in California. And, just prices across the board, rent, your mortgage is going to be a lot more expensive in California. So you could look at the situation of moving to a completely different state that would have a lower cost of living. Or perhaps you could do what a lot of Americans are doing, and perhaps what a lot of people maybe haven't exactly thought about. That is just moving outside the United States in general, because in a lot of these countries, the cost of living is much lower. So instead of paying like $2,000 per month on your rent, you may only have to pay like $400 or $500 per month on rent instead of spending like $300 or $400 per month on groceries. You may only be paying like $100 per month on groceries. So in today's video, we're going to be covering 10 different countries that you could possibly consider moving to. Obviously, before just packing up and moving, you might want to visit these countries to see what it might be like for you if you could see yourself living there. And obviously, in some of these countries, English may not be that widely spoken. It is spoken by usually, younger people there, just because their education, they usually do pick up a second language of English. But of course, you might want to do your own research. In some countries, you actually can't receive Social Security payments in those countries. Two of them being, of course, North Korea and Cuba. Not that many people would probably want to move to North Korea, nor would they be allowed to. So the first country on this list, this is from Yahoo News, by the way, is Panama. They say that the monthly cost of living for a single person there, including rent, is $1,736, and the monthly cost of living for a couple is $2,481. Then we have Costa Rica. The monthly cost of living for a single person there is $1,541, and the monthly cost of living for a couple, including rent, would be $2,348. Then we have Italy. Of course, this is going to be largely dependent on where you decide to live in Italy. Obviously, if you live in a more rural area, it's going to be a lot cheaper, whereas if you live in a very touristy city, obviously it's going to be a lot more expensive and probably completely unaffordable to someone retiring in Italy. But the monthly cost of living there for a single person is $1,761, whereas the monthly cost for living for a couple, including rent, would be $2,645. Then next on the list, we move out to Eastern Asia in Thailand. So the monthly cost of living there for a single person is $1,124, and the monthly cost of living for a couple is $1,683. Now, if you just look at the number just for a second, for a single person, including rent, we're talking food, everything else, $1,124. It's extremely cheap. Compared to the US, where like your rent alone is going to be right around $2,000, even for just like a one bedroom in many parts of this country. Whereas in Thailand, you get everything for half of that, including food and everything else. So obviously incredible there. Then we have Greece. The monthly cost of living there for a single person is $1,369 for a single person. And then for a couple, including rent, it's going to be $2,168. Then we move on to the south of the border in Mexico. So there, the monthly cost of living for a single person, including rent, is $1,284. And the monthly cost of living for a couple, including rent, is $1,909. Mexico is definitely the most popular place for expats to move to and retire in. There's actually a few different YouTube channels that are very interesting that I follow, where there's actually Americans living there. They talk about their life, what retirement like is there, just what life in general is like in Mexico and retiring in Mexico. So if this is something that interests you, you could just type in like expat living in Mexico. You'll see several different channels. It's definitely interesting, something I really enjoy watching. Then of course we have Colombia next on the list. Their monthly cost of living for a single person, including rent, is $860 per month. And then the monthly cost of living for a couple is $1,326 per month. So obviously Colombia is very, very cheap. That's in South America. Then we have Portugal on the list. The monthly cost of living for a single person there is $1,658. $2,028, and the monthly cost of living for a couple is $2,318. It used to be a lot cheaper in Portugal. It has risen just because of the popularity of a lot of Americans and other people throughout the country moving there just because of their lower cost of living. Then finally, we have Ecuador on the list. Their monthly cost of living for a single person is $953, and the monthly cost of living for a couple, including rent, is $1,476. Now, this is actually a country I've been to a couple of different times. My wife is from Ecuador, so that's why I visited. Definitely a beautiful country, and a lot of Americans I know actually have moved there. So we do have a lot of expats. There's kind of like an expat American community in Ecuador, and there's actually expat communities pretty much in all of the countries that I mentioned where a lot of Americans kind of live close to each other. Obviously, they share the same language, the same culture. So again, if you want to check out one of these countries, maybe perhaps you can visit one of them, see what it might be like before making that move. But again, you can definitely stretch your dollar further and make your cost of living adjustments go further if you were to move to one of these countries where you're going to be paying a lot less for rent, a lot less for food, and a lot less for everything else. But again, do your own research on this before just packing up and move. Obviously, it pretty much goes without saying. But that's all we have for today's video. Let me know what your thoughts and comments are below, and I will see you in the next video.